So now it's a great pleasure to introduce someone who really needs no introduction from me, Dr. Lori Olson, one of the greatest inspirations I know in my career, and I hope she is for you too.
Thank you. Thank you. I had the great honor of serving as co-chair to the English Learner Roadmap process and work group, and get to take you now into the policy and get you active, making meaning of it in true Common Core fashion, a little close reading, etc. I want to say we called this section a deeper dive, and it's a little bit of a mixed metaphor when you think about it, because a roadmap, like you're in a car driving along, and you can kind of see these big mountains, and we all know what big mountains and challenges we face in trying to change the direction of our schools. But deeper dive really also implies that we've got submarine capabilities, and we're going to do some really diving deep into the bottom of the ocean to really shift the foundation of what we're doing with our English learners. So I wanted to start by just asking, it's been a year now since the policy was passed unanimously by the State Board, and we just want to know, by a show of hands, how many of you have actually read the policy before? You've seen it and read it? Okay. Great. So some of you have some working knowledge of what's in it. How many of you have attended a training or a workshop that really got you into thinking about the implications? Some of you. Okay, and you came back for more, or you brought people with you. And has anybody here led a training or a workshop? Okay, we're putting you to work. So, okay. I want to say a few things just to get us sort of situated for our work together on this. In your document, in this, which we're hoping you're going to get very familiar with, you're going to fill it with Post-its, there are Post-its in the middle of the table, etc. What was actually voted on by the State Board shows up as an appendix on page 34. And this is what you'll see where they went through the findings and the rationale for it. And then there's a vision and a mission and a set of principles which lay out for us what we ought to be doing. But the short version of it really can be, we put together an infographic that looks like this. Looks like what's on the screen, which is on page 19. And that is really meant to be shorthand for you, shorthand in terms of language, but just visually. And what's really important to notice about that, because believe me, we had long conversations about what the infographic was going to look like, is that this implies a very different kind of policy than we've ever had for English learners. We have relied in the past on civil rights law and mandates and telling our districts what needs to be happening for our English learners. In this era of local control, of the New California Way, the notion is that by laying out an aspirational vision of where we're all headed, where we're all expecting and wanting to go as a state, we expect that there will be different roads to get there, and that is your job locally. That's your task in your schools, in your districts, to figure out your path to get you there, guided by these 4 principles. So the different roads are purposeful in the infographic. This will make more sense to you as we get into our work, and we're going to work through it together. And what I want you to be doing as we work through these sections of the policy itself is to be thinking about what seems really important to me here. What's like the new idea or the key idea here? What's it telling us is our shared direction for English learners? What seems new about it? What is it that I need to understand, that people back in my schools and our communities really need to understand is a shift from the way we've been doing it? And what are just some key phrases that jump out to you that kind of capture the real feel of what this roadmap is about? So, as we do it, I want to point out one other tool, because you may prefer to look at the infographic as we're working our way through, or something else. You have on your tables these handy-dandy palm cards. Palm cards because they can fit in your pocket, and then you can just fold them out anytime you want to talk to somebody about the roadmap or refer to it or quote it or use it as direction or remind yourself of whatever. These palm cards have the 4 principles, the mission and the vision. They're made available through Kaabe, and you can download and print more or order more, but we have those for you. So, pretty neat, huh? Okay, let's get into it and then get you busy working. You've been sitting and listening for a long time. The first part of the roadmap is the vision. And the vision says, and so again, be thinking, what's new here? How is this a new direction? What's important about all of this? English learners fully and meaningfully access and participate in a 21st century education from early childhood through grade 12 that results in their attaining high levels of English proficiency, mastery of grade level standards, and opportunities to develop proficiency in multiple languages. Okay, that's the beginning of it. That's a sense of where we're going. The mission, our job to get us there as schools, is California schools will affirm, welcome, and respond to a diverse range of English learners' strengths, needs, and identities. California schools prepare graduates with the linguistic, academic, and social skills and competencies they require for college, career, and civic participation in a global, diverse, and multilingual world, thus ensuring a thriving future for California. So just so far, I mean, these are mission and vision statements, big ideas, right? They don't quite tell you what to do, but they do point our direction. And so we want to take a little bit of time to actually pay attention to them. Your note-taking guide, which Gina had mentioned before, in your binders, which are on right at the beginning, I think, page 2, thank you, has as part of it this kind of T-graph organizer, graphic organizer. We want you to just look at the vision and mission themselves, and at your table, just talk about what's the shift here? Kind of where have we been with English learner education, and what's new about this mission and vision? And what's really significant from that point of view. And then we'll get deeper into the principles, the elements, and what you really need to do. What kind of questions do you have about what I'm asking? Okay, so enjoy a chance just to talk to each other and dig in. What is different? What is new? What is the shift? So the vision and the mission point us in the direction. They say, as a state, this is what we're committed to attaining. But the job of getting us there is something very, very different, right? And so the policy also laid out 4 interrelated principles. And the thing that's important to know about these principles is that they are research-based. So in the last 40 years, back from when we started building English learner programs and policy and responding to the basic mandate that we provide access and overcome the language barriers, we started out with theory but no real research. And in those decades, we have amassed coherent, solid, well understood research about what we should be doing. And so this is a policy that was designed first based on what does the research tell us makes a difference for English learners to really provide access and high-level academics and linguistic skills. So they're research-based. Behind them, one of the things we talked about, should we be putting together research compendiums for each of them? But what you should know walking into it is just this is research-based. Secondly, they're principles that are designed to be used and made applicable at all levels of the system. And by levels of the system, it should make sense at the classroom level for teachers. They should make sense at the school administrative level. They should make sense in community school partnerships. They should make sense for county offices and for districts and school boards, as well as for the state in its own work. So we tried to articulate a set of principles that could apply across all of that. And the policy itself says, and what was adopted by the state board, the expectation is that this is a shared responsibility of all educators. This is not just something for the English Learner Coordinator in your district office to make happen. It's expected that this will infuse the work of people throughout curriculum and instruction, of people working with family engagement, of people working on accountability in your districts, et cetera. We're going to show you a short video. It was produced by CABE for the CABE conference as one of a set of videos that can be available to you if you're interested, about the principles themselves, just to begin to give a picture of what does this look like in classrooms for kids. And you get to see me wearing a different outfit. The California English Learner Roadmap is the new policy for English learners in the state of California. It supersedes the old Proposition 227 policy and puts in place instead a common mission and vision for all of our schools and a roadmap for how to get there. That roadmap consists of 4 research-based principles, which really speak to the different aspects of what we have to put in place and the connections between the two. And those principles are, number 1, asset-based education that values and builds on the languages and cultures students bring and that provides them with truly affirming and safe, welcoming schools. This is an era that is about embracing the languages and the cultures children bring and providing all of our students, to the extent we can, with opportunities to develop proficiency in 2 or more languages. The second principle really speaks to the quality of the intellectual work that our children are exposed to in their classrooms, of the quality of teaching and learning. High-level standards with meaningful access provided by teachers who know how to scaffold participation and support our students in really participating in class and mastering everything they need to, overcoming language barriers, learning the English they need, and it also speaks to the importance of us assuring access to all of those college preparatory classes that every child needs in order to leave our high schools, college, and career ready. Principle number 3 is about investing in a system with the resources, the assessments, with the professional development, the leadership development that we need in order to carry off the kind of teaching and learning that our students require. Systems includes everything from, do we have assessments that really tell us whether our children are learning and what's happening to them in both of their languages and in ways that are really reliable information for teachers and for accountability. Systems includes having the teaching staff with the skills needed to meet the needs of their English learners and the processes of professional development and professional support for them so they can continue to learn the skills they need. Systems is about having leadership that understand English learner needs and are prepared with the skills and the approaches to really act upon that knowledge and to hold their schools accountable for moving along a path of continuous improvement toward the goals of the kind of schools we need. If we don't make those investments, it ends up just being pretty words on a page. And that's where it really falls to everybody at the local level to see to it that this roadmap guides our financial planning, our local control accountability planning, and our own school site planning. And the 4th principle is about an articulated system, a connected system from preschool all the way through to high school graduation, all moving in the same direction to ensure that our students get the education they need. Alignment and articulation all the way from preschool through graduation from high school. Coherence across the system, so what happens in one school is connected to what happens in another school, and so as children move from grade to grade to grade, they're receiving a pathway of education that is connected, aligned, and coordinated. What we know now is that early education is a crucial part of our system, that we have to start early when those brains are just wired for language and cognitive development, those crucial years that build a foundation for later success. That we need a system that invests in early childhood education and connects it all the way up in a pathway through to high school graduation. What the roadmap tries to do is to lay out a comprehensive view of all the things that would be happening to really support English learners. Everything from ensuring access to ensuring the quality of education, to seeing to it that teachers have the skills they need to pull that off, to seeing to it that there's assessment that is reliable and valid for them. by painting that comprehensive picture of what needs to be in place, and by saying, as a state, we're reaching toward this vision of education that prepares our kids with 21st century skills, with proficiency in multiple languages, we are all moving together on a road toward the same goal. So, the 4 principles, beginning to break it down. We're going to be moving into a time where each of you at your table is going to specialize in one principle. You're going to go to a table, we're going to do a kind of jigsaw, and you're going to do a deep dive on those principles. But before we do, I just want to point out on page 13 of your document is the section of the 4 interrelated principles. And I'm going to just quickly read you each of the principles and then put you into your groups. Principle 1, that asset-oriented, needs-responsive schools. I want to tell you that when the working group put this together, we talked long and hard about how important it is that this be the first. This is the foundation. This is the way we greet, we feel, we embrace our students. Preschools and schools are responsive to different English learners' strengths, needs, and identities, and support the socio-emotional health and development of English learners. Programs value and build upon the cultural and linguistic assets students bring to their education in safe and affirming school climates. And educators value and build strong family, community, and school partnerships. So that's principle number 1. Principle number 2, that moves from that larger sense of climate and relationships to basically curriculum and instruction. Principle 2 is intellectual quality of instruction and meaningful access. And hopefully you'll see a lot of connection here to our ELA, ELD framework and other work. English learners engage in intellectually rich, developmentally appropriate learning experiences that foster high levels of English proficiency. And these experiences integrate language development, literacy, and content learning, as well as provide access for comprehension and participation through native language instruction and scaffolding. English learners have meaningful access to a full standards-based and relevant curriculum and the opportunity to develop proficiency in English and other languages. And then principle 3 goes on to say, well, it's one thing to say this is what we need to have happening in our schools. Part of our job is to see to it we've got the system that is going to support this happening, make it possible for teachers, administrators, counselors to do their job. So each level of the school system, the state, the county, the district, the school, the preschools, and leaders and educators who are knowledgeable and responsive to the strengths and needs of English learners in their communities, and who utilize valid assessment and other data systems that inform instruction and continuous improvement. Each level of the school system provides resources and tiered support to ensure strong programs and build the capacity of teachers and staff to leverage the strengths and meet the needs of English learners. And then the 4th principle says, okay, we can have that happening in all of these places, but we need a connected system. And so it's about alignment and articulation. English learners experience a coherent, articulated, and aligned set of practices and pathways across grade levels and educational segments, beginning with a strong foundation in early childhood and appropriate identification of strengths and needs, continuing through to reclassification and beyond, to graduation, higher ed, and career opportunities. These pathways foster the skills, language, literacy, and knowledge students need for college and career readiness and participation in a global, diverse, multilingual 21st century world. Now, each of those principles is then further identified by a set of elements. So again, if you look at page 13, you'll see under that principle 1, there's starting to be a list of elements. And you turn the page, oh yeah, there's like 4 or 5 or 6 elements to each principle, goes on to principle 2 and lists the elements. Those are getting more actionable now. Those are starting to explain what it can actually look like. So your job now is going to be to specialize in one of those principles and its elements. And we're going to assign you, even though you may have your personal favorite. I really love Principle 3, but for now you're just going to be the expert in it. We're going to ask you to count around the table, 1, 2, 3, 4, and your tables are large enough so you'll have some people overlapping. So If you get to be person 5 or 6, you can pick which of the other principals you want to go to. So go ahead, do your count off so you know which one you're part of. Then I'm going to assume that you've done that task. Now let me explain to you what you're going to do. You need to listen up because it's a little bit complicated, but beautifully orchestrated by the SCOE people. You see these banners around the room. There's one banner for each of the principals, and those are the general corners of the room. So Elena, which is your principal over there? Look behind you. Principal 1's going to be in that area. Is that one principal 2? I can't see that far. Principal 2 is generally in that area. Principal 3, which is generally that area, and principal 4 is generally this area. It's also color coordinated by tables. So you'll see in the middle of every table, there's a card that might look like this. This is principal 4, so it's color coded. All the principal 4 tables have the yellow card. All the principal 3s have pink. Principal 2s are a different yellow, and principal 1 is orange. Your job now is going to be to go to a table for your principal. At most tables, there will be a facilitator who will introduce themselves. If you don't have a facilitator, all you have to do is ask one of your people to kind of take on the job of keeping you on task. This is what you're going to do. Bring this with you and your note-taker pages if you're for keeping notes. You're going to read again the vision and mission and then concentrate on your principle and your elements. As you go, just highlight key things about it. But your discussion with each other at your table is going to be, what is this principle really telling us? What does it really mean? What's new about it? What's important about it? How is it a shift? Those are the same things we did with the mission and principle. And then what does it really look like? What does it really mean? Like if I'm sitting here as a teacher, how would I make sense of this? Or if I'm sitting here as a principal, how would I make sense of this? What is this really suggesting needs to be going on in our schools? So you're going to have 20 minutes for it. Are there any questions? Great. Go and enjoy a deeper dive. Now comes the hardest part of the day, which is you're going to return to your table without taking a break because you're going to know that in about 15 more minutes you will have a real break. But we need you to get back to your tables as soon as possible, and I'll tell you what to do. You're going to share out. You have about 2 minutes per principal, so kind of watch your own time. I'll start the little clock in a minute. About 2 minutes per principal, just to share out the main thing about what's important about this principle and what does it really mean. This is both to inform your table and to begin to get your team and your table a more comprehensive view of what it is and how this all fits together. But it's also beginning your task as a communicator, which is a theme throughout today's institute. It's going to be your ability to articulate what this roadmap is and what it means that's going to make all the difference in whether it gets implemented. So this is the beginning of that task. Somebody at your table should just be watching the time, 2 minutes per principal, and go. Hopefully you're getting a deeper sense of both what this policy is saying and also how this policy is working. Okay, it's pointing us in a direction. It's giving us some research-based principles. There's one other little thing that we want to point your attention to before we take our break, and that is, yes, these are research-based. Yes, it's an aspirational policy. It's also a values-based policy. And it's helpful, I think, to hone in on those values that cut through this. In communicating, in thinking about what does this really mean for us. And so some of those cross-cutting values, I know Al started the morning by saying this is a compassionate policy. But some of the other ones that it's affirming, it's definitely assets-based. It's about finding what is strong and what the gifts are in our students and building on that. It's inclusive. It's intellectually rich. This is not bottom line. This is like reaching for our kids to be at the peak of their intellectual prowess. It's about full access. It's about being responsive to our students in the same way that the framework is so rich in all of that. It's responding to who our students are. It's about bilingualism, Yes, because it's a skill, but also because, as Tom Adams was saying this morning, it's about what language and bilingualism enables us to do, to reach out, to connect, etc. And it's about investing in our system. It's a value it's laden with that sense that if this is what we believe in, if this is what we want to go to and go for, we need to invest in our teachers and our systems to make it happen. So those are some of the themes, some of what I think of as the values behind the roadmap. And we want to give you, while the principles are still very alive in your mind, a minute or two to just reflect for yourself and jot down on your note taker what values behind this are really resonating with you. And if you're reading the slide behind me, you'll say, take notes toward your elevator speech. And you're probably thinking, elevator speech? Nobody said anything about an elevator speech. This is your advanced warning that by the end of today, you're going to have an elevator speech to be able to deliver about the roadmap. And one element of it should be about what those values are that really resonate with you. So take a minute or two and jot those down, and then I'll direct us toward our break and next steps. Thought on this? One of the values underlying this, which really is important to me, as a longtime English learner advocate that lived through many, many years of not being able to trust whether the system would do the right thing for our English learners, this policy is predicated on trust. The trust that educators, with a shared vision, will do what needs to happen for our English learners. And that means that every one of us has to be the engine that's going to go back and make it work. So we're going to take a break. I wanted to point out and just introduce Veronica Aguilar, who's the head of the Language Leadership Policy Office at CDE, who just came in and was just a central leader to the whole roadmap process. So glad you could be here for this part. And to just say, I just noticed on the tables, you may not have noticed that one of the palm cards is in Spanish, so you may want to take 2 different palm cards with you as you go to your break. We will take a break now. We're coming back at 10:50 to hear from a wonderful district who's giving life to the roadmap.